Play It As It Lays by Joan Didion. For John. Mariah. What makes Iago evil? Some people ask. I never ask. Another example, one which springs to mind because Miss Burstein saw a pygmy rattler in the artichoke garden this morning and has been intractable since. I never ask about snakes. Why should Shalimar attract crates? Why should a coral snake need 2 glands of neurotoxic poison to survive, while a king snake, so similarly marked, needs none? Where is the Darwinian logic there? You might ask that. I never would. Not anymore. I recall an incident reported not long ago in the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner. 2 honeymooners, natives of Detroit, found dead in their scout camper near Boca Raton, a coral snake still coiled in a thermal blanket. Why? Unless you were prepared to take the long view, there is no satisfactory answer to such questions. Just so. I am what I am. To look for reasons is beside the point, but because the pursuit of reasons is their business here, they ask me questions. Mariah, yes or no? I see a cock in this ink blot. Mariah, yes or no? A large number of people are guilty of bad sexual conduct. I believe my sins are unpardonable. I have been disappointed in love. How could I answer? How could it apply? Nothing applies. I print with a magnetized IBM pencil. What does apply? They ask later, as if the word nothing were ambiguous, open to interpretation, a questionable fragment of an Icelandic rune. There are only certain facts, I say, trying again to be an agreeable player of the game. Certain facts, certain things that happened. Why bother, you might ask? I bother for Kate. What I play for here is Kate. Carter put Kate in there, and I am going to get her out. They will misread the facts, invent connections, will extrapolate reasons where none exist. But I told you, that is their business there, or their business here. So they suggested that I set down the facts, and the facts are these. My name is Mariah Wyeth. That is pronounced Mar-I-ah, to get it straight at the outset. Some people here call me Mrs. Lang, but I never did. Age, 31. Married. Divorced. 1 daughter, age 4. I talk about Kate to no one here. In the place where Kate is, they put electrodes on her head and needles in her spine and try to figure out what went wrong. It is one more version of why does a coral snake have 2 glands of neurotoxic poison. Kate has soft down on her spine and an aberrant chemical in her brain. Kate is Kate. Carter could not remember the soft down on her spine, or he would not let them put needles there. From my mother, I inherited my looks and a tendency to migraine. From my father, I inherited an optimism which did not leave me until recently. Details. I was born in Reno, Nevada, and moved 9 years later to Silver Wells, Nevada, population then 28, now 0. We moved down to Silver Wells because my father lost the Reno house in a private game and happened to remember that he owned this town, Silver Wells. He had bought it or won it, or maybe his father left it to him. I'm not sure which, and it doesn't matter to you. We had a lot of things and places that came and went, a cattle ranch with no cattle, and a ski resort picked up on somebody's second mortgage, and a motel that would have been advantageously situated at a freeway exit had the freeway been built. I was raised to believe that what came in on the next roll would always be better than what went out on the last. I no longer believe that, but I am telling you how it was. What we had in Silver Wells was 300 acres of mesquite and some houses and a flying A and a zinc mine and a Tonopah and Tidewater RR siding and trinket shop, and later, after my father and his partner Benny Austin hit on the idea that Silver Wells was a natural tourist attraction, a midget golf course and a reptile museum, and a restaurant with some slots and 2 crap tables. The slots were not exactly money makers because the only person who played them was Paulette, with nickels from the cash box. Paulette ran the restaurant and, I see now, bawled my father and sometimes let me pretend to cashier after school. I say pretend because there were no customers. As it happened, the highway my father counted on came nowhere near, and the money ran out, and my mother got sick, and Benny Austin went back to Vegas. I ran into him in the Flamingo a few years ago. Your father's only Waterloo was he was a man always 20 years before his time, Benny advised me that night in the Flamingo. The ghost town scheme, the midget golf, the automatic blackjack concept. What do you see today? Harry Wyeth could be a Rockefeller in Silver Wells today. There isn't any Silver Wells today, I said. It's in the middle of a missile range. I'm speaking about then, Mariah, as it was. Benny called for a round of Cuba Libres, a drink I have never known anyone but my mother and father and Benny Austin to order, and I gave him some chips to play for me and went to the ladies' room and never came back. I told myself it was because I didn't want Benny to see the kind of man I was with. I was with a man who was playing baccarat with $100 bills behind the rope, but that wasn't all of it. I might as well lay it on the line. I have trouble with as it was. I mean, it leads nowhere. Benny Austin, my mother sitting in Paulette's empty restaurant when it was 120 degrees outside looking through our magazines for contests we could enter. Waikiki, Paris, France, Roman holiday. My mother's yearnings suffused our life like nerve gas. Cross the ocean in a silver plane. She would croon to herself and mean it. See the jungle when it's wet with rain. The 3 of us driving down to Vegas in the pickup and then driving home again in the clear night. 100 miles down and 100 back, and nobody on the highway either way, just so the snakes stretched on the warm asphalt, and my mother with a wilted gardenia in her dark hair, and my father keeping a fifth of Jim Beam on the floorboard and talking about his plans. He always had a lot of plans. I never in my life had any plans. None of it makes any sense. None of it adds up. New York. What sense did that make? An 18-year-old girl from Silver Wells, Nevada, graduates from the Consolidated Union High School in Tonopah and goes to New York to take acting lessons. How do you figure it? My mother thought being an actress was a nice idea. She used to cut my hair in bangs to look like Margaret Sullivan, and my father said not to be afraid to go because if certain deals worked out as anticipated, he and my mother would be regular airline passengers between Las Vegas and New York City. So I went. As it turned out, the last time but once I ever saw my mother was sitting in the Vegas airport drinking a Cuba Libre, but there you are. Everything goes. I am working very hard at not thinking about how everything goes. I watch a hummingbird, throw the I Ching but never read the coins, keep my mind in the now. New York. Let me stick to certain facts. What happened was this. I looked all right. I'm not telling you I was blessed or cursed. I'm telling a fact. I know it from all the pictures. And somebody photographed me. And before long, I was getting $100 an hour from the agencies and $50 from the magazines, which in those days was not bad. And I knew a lot of Southerners and faggots and rich boys, and that was how I spent my days and nights. The night my mother ran the car off the highway outside Tonopah, I was with a drunk rich boy at the old Morocco, as close as I could figure later. I didn't know about it for a couple of weeks because the coyotes tore her up before anybody found her and my father couldn't tell me. Jesus, but we had a good thing going on in Silver Wells, Benny Austin said that night in the Flamingo. And maybe they did. Maybe I did. Maybe I never should have left. But that line of thinking leads nowhere because, as I told Benny, there is no Silver Wells. The last I heard of Paulette, she was living in a Sun City. Think that one over. My father's letter was mailed to an old address and forwarded. I read it in a taxi one morning when I was late for a sitting, and when I hit the fact in the middle of the second paragraph, I began to scream and did not work for a month after. The letter is still in my makeup box, but I am careful not to read it unless I am drunk, which in my current situation is never. This is a bad hand, but God, if there is one, and honey, I sincerely believe there must be something, never meant it to set you back in your plans, is how it ends. Don't let them bluff you back there because you're holding all the aces. Easy aces. I'm not sure what year it was because I have this problem with as it was. But after a while, I had a bad time. There you will say now, she believed her sins were unpardonable. But I told you, nothing applies. The tulips on Park Avenue looked dirty, and I was sent twice to Montego Bay to get some color back in my face. But I could not sleep alone and stayed up late, and it was falling apart with Ivan Costello, and everything showed in the camera by then. Of course, I did not get back to Nevada that year because that was the year I screamed at Ivan and married Carter. And the next was the year we came here, and Carter put me in a couple of little pictures, one you may have seen. A doctor here claims to have seen it, but he will say anything to make me talk. The other never distributed. And I don't know what happened the year after that, and then I started getting to Nevada quite a bit. But by then my father was dead, and I was not married anymore. Those are the facts. Now I lie in the sun and play solitaire and listen to the sea. The sea is down the cliff, but I am not allowed to swim, only on Sundays when we are accompanied, and watch a hummingbird. I try not to think of dead things and plumbing. I try not to hear the air conditioner in that bedroom in Encino. I try not to live in Silverwells or in New York or with Carter. I try to live in the now and keep my eye on the hummingbird. I see no one I used to know, but then I'm not just crazy about a lot of people. I mean, maybe I was holding all the aces, but what was the game? Helen. I saw Mariah today, or at least I tried to see Mariah today. I made the effort. I didn't make it for Mariah, I don't mind saying. I made it for Carter, or for BZ, or for old times, or for something, not for Mariah. I don't much want to talk to you, Helen, was what she said the last time. It's not personal, Helen. I just don't talk anymore. Not for Mariah. Anyway, I didn't see her. I drove all the way out there, took the entire morning and packed a box for her, all the new books and a chiffon scarf she left at the beach once. She was careless. It must have cost $30. She was always careless. And a pound of caviar. Maybe not beluga, but Mariah shouldn't bitch now. Plus a letter from Ivan Costello and a long profile somebody did in the New York Times about Carter. You'd think that would at least interest her, except Mariah had never been able to bear Carter's success. All that, and Mariah wouldn't see me. Mrs. Lang is resting, the nurse said. I could see her resting. I could see her down by the pool in the same bikini she was wearing the summer she killed BZ, lying by that swimming pool with a shade over her eyes as if she hadn't a care or responsibility in the world. She never puts on any weight. You'll notice that's often true of selfish women. Not that I blame Mariah for anything that happened to me. Although I'm the one who suffered, I'm the one who should be resting. I'm the one who lost BZ through her carelessness, her selfishness, but I blame her only on Carter's behalf. Half a chance and she would have killed Carter too. She was always a very selfish girl. It was first, last, and always Mariah. Carter. Here are some scenes I have very clear in my mind. I always get breakfast out, I say to someone. This is at a dinner party, a group of friends. Mariah would say that they were not her friends, but Mariah has never understood friendship, conversation, the normal amenities of social exchange. Mariah has difficulty talking to people with whom she is not sleeping. I go to the Wilshire or the Beverly Hills, I say. I read the trades. I like to be alone at breakfast. In fact, he doesn't always get breakfast out, Mariah says, very low, to no one in particular. In fact, the last time he got breakfast out was on April 17th. The others at the table look first at her and then away, astonished, uneasy. Something in the way her hands are tensed on the edge of the table prevents passing this off. Only BZ continues to look directly at her. Oh, fuck it, she says then, and tears run down her cheeks. She still looks very straight ahead at no one in particular. Another scene. She is playing on the lawn with the baby, tossing up drops of water from a clear plastic hose. Watch out she doesn't get chilled, I say from the terrace. Mariah looks up, drops the hose, and walks away from the baby toward the pool house. She turns and looks back at the baby. Your father wants to talk to you, she says. Her voice is neutral. After Beezy's death, there was a time when I played and replayed these scenes and others like them, composed them as if for the camera, trying to find some order, a pattern. I found none. All I can say is this. It was after a succession of such small scenes that I began to see the improbability of a rapprochement with Mariah. Chapter 1. In the first hot month of the fall after the summer she left Carter, the summer Carter left her, the summer Carter stopped living in the house in Beverly Hills, Mariah drove the freeway. She dressed every morning with a greater sense of purpose than she had felt in some time, a cotton skirt, a jersey, sandals she could kick off when she wanted the touch of the accelerator, and she dressed very fast, running a brush through her hair once or twice and tying it back with a ribbon, for it was essential, to pause was to throw herself into unspeakable peril, that she be on the freeway by 10 o'clock. Not somewhere on Hollywood Boulevard, not on her way to the freeway, but actually on the freeway. If she was not, she lost the day's rhythm, its precariously imposed momentum. Once she was on the freeway and had maneuvered her way to a fast lane, she turned on the radio at high volume, and she drove. She drove the San Diego to the harbor up to the Hollywood to the Golden State, the Santa Monica, the Santa Ana, the Pasadena, the Ventura. She drove it as a riverman runs a river, every day more attuned to its currents, its deceptions, and just as a riverman feels the pull of the rapids in the lull between sleeping and waking, so Mariah lay at night in the still of Beverly Hills and saw the great sign soar overhead at 70 miles an hour, Normandy, quarter mile, Vermont, 3/4 mile, or exit numbers, Normandy 1/4, Vermont 3/4, Harbor Freeway 1. Again and again she returned to an intricate stretch just south of the interchange where successful passage from the Hollywood onto the harbor required a diagonal move across 4 lanes of traffic. On the afternoon she finally did it without once breaking or once losing a beat on the radio. She was exhilarated, and that night slept dreamlessly. By then she was sleeping not in the house, but out by the pool, on a faded rattan chaise left by a former tenant. There was a jack for a telephone there, and she used beach towels for blankets. The beach towels had a special point, because she had an uneasy sense that sleeping outside on a rattan chaise could be construed as the first step towards something unnameable. She did not know what it was she feared, but it had to do with empty sardine cans in the sink, vermouth bottles in the wastebaskets, slovenliness past the point of return. She told herself that she was sleeping outside just until it was too cold to sleep beneath beach towels, just until the heat broke, just until the fires stopped burning in the mountains, sleeping outside only because the bedrooms in the house were hot, airless, only because the palms scraped against the screens and there was no one to wake her in the mornings. The beach towel signified how temporary the arrangement was. Outside she did not have to be afraid that she would not wake up. Outside she could sleep. Sleep was essential if she was to be on the freeway by 10 o'clock. Sometimes the freeway ran out in a scrap metal yard in San Pedro, or on the main street of Palmdale, or out somewhere no place at all where the flawless burning concrete just stopped, turned into common road, abandoned, construction of sheds rusting beside it. When that happened, she would keep in careful control, portage skillfully back, feel for the first time the heavy weight of the becalmed car beneath her, and try to keep her eyes on the main stream, the great pilings, the cyclone fencing, the deadly oleander, the luminous signs, the organism which absorbed all her reflexes. all her attention. So that she would not have to stop for food, she kept a hard-boiled egg on the passenger seat of the Corvette. She could shell and eat a hard-boiled egg at 70 miles an hour. Crack it on the steering wheel, never mind salt. Salt bloats. No matter what happened, she remembered her body. And she drank Coca-Cola in Union 76 stations, standard stations, flying A's. She would stand on the hot pavement and drink the Coke from the bottle and put the bottle back in the rack. She tried always to let the attendant notice her putting the bottle in the rack, a show of thoughtful responsibility. No sardine cans in her sink. And then she would walk to the edge of the concrete and stand, letting the sun dry her damp back. To hear her own voice, she would sometimes talk to the attendant, ask advice on oil filters, how much air the tire should carry, the most efficient route to Foothill Boulevard in West Covina. Then she would retie the ribbon in her hair and rinse her dark glasses in the drinking fountain and be ready to drive again. In the first hot month of the fall after the summer she left Carter, the summer Carter left her, the summer Carter stopped living in the house in Beverly Hills, a bad season in the city, Mariah put 7,000 miles on the Corvette. Sometimes at night, the dread would overtake her, bathe her in sweat, flood her mind with sharp flash images of Les Goodwin in New York and Carter out there on the desert with BZ and Helen and the irrevocability of what seemed already to have happened, but she never thought about that on the freeway. Chapter 2. The second picture she had made with Carter was called Angel Beach, and in it she played a girl who was raped by the members of a motorcycle gang. Carter had brought the picture in for $340,000, and the studio had saturation booked it, and by the end of the first year, the domestic and foreign gross was just under $8 million. Mariah had seen it twice, once at a studio preview and a second time by herself at a drive-in in Culver City, and neither time did she have any sense that the girl on the screen was herself. I look at you, and I know that what happened just didn't mean anything, the girl on the screen would say, and there's a lot more to living than just kicks. I see that now. Kicks are nowhere. Carter's original cut ended with a shot of the motorcycle gang as if they represented some reality not fully apprehended by the girl Mariah played. But the cut released by the studio ended with a long dolly shot of Mariah strolling across the campus. Mariah preferred the studio's cut. In fact, she liked watching the picture. The girl on the screen seemed to have a definite knack for controlling her own destiny. The other picture, the first picture, the picture never distributed, was called Mariah. Carter had simply followed Mariah around New York and shot film. It was not until they moved to California and Carter began cutting the film together that she entirely realized what he was doing. The picture showed Mariah doing a fashion sitting, Mariah asleep on a couch at a party, Mariah on the telephone arguing with the billing department at Bloomingdale's, Mariah cleaning some marijuana with a kitchen strainer, Mariah crying on the IRT. At the end, she was thrown into negative and looked dead. The picture lasted 74 minutes and had won a prize at a festival in Eastern Europe, and Mariah did not like to look at it. She had once heard that students at UCLA and USC talked about using her the way commercial directors talked about using actresses who got $1 million a picture, but she had never talked to any of them. Sometimes they walked up to Carter in front of a theater or a bookstore and introduced themselves, and Carter would introduce Mariah, and they would look sidelong at Mariah while they talked to Carter about coming to see their film programs, but Mariah had nothing to say to them, avoided their eyes, and she disliked their having seen her in that first picture. She never thought of it as Mariah. She thought of it as always as that first picture. Carter took her to BZ and Helen's one night when BZ was running the picture and she had to leave the house after the titles, had to sit outside on the beach smoking cigarettes and fighting nausea for the 72 of the 74 minutes. Why does he run it so often? She had said to Carter later. Why do you let him keep a print out there? He keeps a print in the house. He owns it, Mariah. He owns all the prints. That's not what I mean. I said, why does he run it so often? He wants Helen to see it. Helen's seen it a dozen times. Helen doesn't even like it. She told me so. You don't understand anything, Carter had said finally, and they had gone to bed that night without speaking. Mariah did not want to understand why BZ ran that first picture so often, or what it had to do with Helen. The girl on the screen in that first picture had no knack for anything. Chapter 3. Mariah Wyeth, she repeated to Freddie Chaikin's receptionist. The reception room was full of glossy plants in schwanassery pots, and Mariah had an abrupt conviction that the plants were consuming the oxygen she needed to breathe. She should not have come here without calling. Only people in trouble came unannounced to see their agents. If Freddie Chaikin thought she carried trouble with her, he would avoid her, because trouble was something no one in the city liked to be near. Failure, illness, fear, they were seen as infectious, contagious blights on glossy plants. It seemed to Mariah that even the receptionist was avoiding her eyes, fearing contamination. He's kind of expecting me, Mariah added in a near whisper. Mariah Wyeth, the receptionist said. Mr. Chaikin is in the projection room. Do you want to wait? Or could he call you? No, I mean yes, but tell him it has to be today or... The receptionist waited. Or I'll talk to him tomorrow, Mariah said finally. In the elevator was an actor she recognized but had never met, the star of a canceled television western. He was with a short agent in a narrow dark suit, and the agent smiled at Mariah as the elevator door closed. The word on Carter's dailies is sensational, the agent said. Mariah smiled and nodded. It did not require an answer. It was a cue for the actor, who waited a suitable instant and then picked it up. Your pocketbook's open, he drawled, and the look he gave Mariah was dutifully charged with sexual appreciation, meant not for Mariah herself, but for Carter Lang's wife. She leaned against the padded elevator wall and closed her eyes. If she could tell Les Goodwin about the actor in the elevator, he would laugh. When she got home, she thought about calling him, but instead she went upstairs and lay face down on Kate's empty bed, cradled Kate's blanket, clutched Kate's baby pillow to her stomach, and fought off a wave of the dread. The time seemed to have passed for telling Les Goodwin funny stories. Chapter 4. She sat on the rattan chaise in the hot October twilight and watched BZ throw the ice cubes from his drink one by one into the swimming pool. They had already talked about Helen's week at La Costa, and they had already talked about an actress who had been admitted to UCLA neuropsychiatric with her wrists cut. The paper said exhaustion, but BZ knew things like that, knew about people. That was why she had called him. And now it was the hour when in all the houses all around, the pretty women were putting on perfume and enameled bracelets and kissing the pretty children goodnight, the hour of apparent grace and promised music, and even here in Mariah's own garden, the air smelled of jasmine and the water in the pool was 85 degrees. The water in the pool was always 85 degrees, and it was always clean. It came with the rent. Whether or not Carter could afford the rent, whether it was a month like this one when he was making a lot of money, or a month when the lawyers were talking about bankruptcy, the boy came twice a week to vacuum the pool, and the man came 4 days a week to work on the roses, and the water in the pool was 85 degrees. Sometimes it occurred to Mariah that maybe the pretty children and the enameled bracelets came the same way, but she did not like to think about that. Tell me who you've seen, she said. She did not much want to hear who BZ had seen, but neither did she want BZ to leave. BZ had not yet mentioned Carter. BZ was the producer on the picture. BZ had come in from the location 2 days before, and he was going back to the location tomorrow, and he had not once mentioned Carter. Tell me about the Willards dance. Strobe lights in Pasadena. BZ stood up. On nights like that, you could kill yourself for being a Gentile. Don't leave. I'm late now. I'm supposed to be somewhere. Who is it? She said, not looking at him. Nobody special. I'm meeting Tommy Lowe. You know, Tommy. He's in from New York. I don't mean you. She wondered without interest if Tommy Lowe was gay. You know, I don't mean you. I don't know what you're talking about. BZ put his glass on the table and looked at Mariah for a long while. Just let him finish. Who is it? She did not know why she persisted. Listen, Mariah, I don't know if you know this, but he wanted you in this picture very badly. At one point, he was ready to scrap the deal, jeopardize the entire project just because he wanted to use you. I know that. Then why not stop thinking Carter designs his every move expressly to thwart you? Why not stop thinking like Carlotta? You don't have any idea in your mind how I think. Carlotta was BZ's mother. Carlotta had $35 million and was engaged in constant litigation with her estranged second husband. Mariah sat down on the edge of the pool and splashed the clear water over her bare feet. Listen to the music from the Kulicks. They're having a party. You going? Of course I'm not going. He's a gangster. I just asked if you were going to a party, Mariah. I didn't ask for a grand jury indictment. BZ paused. In the second place, he's not a gangster. He's a lawyer. For gangsters, BZ shrugged. I think of him more as a philosopher king. He told me once he understood the whole meaning of life. It came to him in a blinding flash one time when he almost died on the table at Cedars. Larry Kulick's not going to die at Cedars. Larry Kulick's going to die in a barber chair. It's uphill work making you laugh, Mariah. Anyway, Larry Kulick's a great admirer of yours. You know what he said to Carter? He said, "What I like about your wife, Carter, is she's not a cunt." Mariah said nothing. That's very funny, Mariah. Kulick's saying this to Carter. You lost your sense of humor? I've already heard it. Give me your glass. I told you. Tommy Lowe. I'm already late. Who is it? She repeated. He's 2 weeks behind schedule now, Mariah. Just let him finish the picture. BZ stood up and ran the tips of his fingers very lightly across Mariah's bare back. Seen anything of Les Goodwin? He said finally. Mariah watched a leaf in the water and tried not to recoil from BZ's fingers. Les and Felicia are in New York, she said carefully, and then reached for a towel. You're already late for Tommy Lowe. Aren't you? Later in the week, she saw in one of the columns that BZ had been at the Kulick's party with Tommy Lowe and a starlet whose name she did not recognize. She did not know why it annoyed her, but it did. She wondered if Tommy Lowe and the starlet had gone back to BZ's later, and who had watched whom, and if Helen had been back from La Costa. Chapter 5. Just wanted you to know I'm thinking of you, Freddie Chaikin said on the telephone. I'll be frank. I was surprised to hear you wanted to work again. After that debacle with Mark Ross, I just naturally thought, I've always wanted to work. Mariah tried to keep her voice even. Freddie would be sitting in his office with the Barcelona chairs and the Giacometti sculpture, and anything he wanted to say Mariah would have to hear. An actress walks off a set. People tend to think she doesn't want to work. That was almost a year ago. I was sick. I was upset about Kate. I haven't walked off any more sets. You know that, Freddie. You haven't had any sets to walk off. Mariah closed her eyes. What are you doing right now, Freddie? She said finally. You sitting there playing with a Fabergé Easter egg? Or what? Calm down. Actually, I talked to Morty Landau about you today at lunch. I said, Morty, you know Mariah Wyeth, and he did. I should think so. I had the lead in 2 features. Right, Mariah. Of course you did. You know that. I know that. And they were very interesting little pictures. Carter parlayed those 2 little pictures, one of them never distributed, into a very nice thing. Carter's in the enviable position now where he wants to do something. It's just a question of working out the numbers. I'm proud to represent him. I'm proud to represent both of you, Mariah. Maybe I could arrange for Morty Landau to see some film. You give me your word that you really want to work. See some film. Where's the problem, Mariah? There's something so unusual about wanting to see some film. I show film on talent getting $2.50 a picture. Morty Landau makes television. Let's get to the bottom line, Mariah. If Carter were around, he'd say the same thing. You want to work, I'll arrange for Morty Landau to see film. Carter is around. There was a silence, and when Freddie Chaikin spoke again, his voice was gentle. All I meant, Mariah, was that Carter's on location. All I meant. Chapter 6. On the 10th day of October at 4:15 in the afternoon, with a dry, hot wind blowing through the passes, Mariah found herself in Baker. She had never meant to go as far as Baker, had started out that day as every day, her only destination the freeway, but she had driven out the San Bernardino and up the Barstow, and instead of turning back at Barstow, she had been out that far before, but never that late in the day. It was past time to navigate back. She was out too far too late. The rhythm was lost. She kept driving. When she turned off at Baker, it was 115 degrees, and she was picking up Vegas on the radio, and she was within 60 miles of where Carter was making the picture. He could be in the motel right now. They could be through shooting for the day, and he could be having a drink with BZ and Helen, thinking about going into Vegas for dinner or just resting on the unmade bed with his shirt off. The woman who ran the motel only made the beds once a week. Carter had made a joke about it in an interview. Mariah had read it in the trades. She could call. Listen, she could say, I'm in Baker. I just happened to be in Baker. So you just happened to be in Baker, he could say. Get on up here. Or he could even say, listen, get up here quick. Those were things he could say, but because she did not know if he would say them or even if she wanted to hear them, she just sat in the car behind a 76 station in Baker and studied the payphone by the Coke machine. Whatever he began by saying, he would end by saying nothing. He would say something, and she would say something, and before either of them knew it, they would be playing out a dialogue so familiar that it drained the imagination, blocked the will, allowed them to drop words and whole sentences and still arrive at the cold conclusion. Oh, Christ, he would say. I felt good today, really good for a change. You fixed that. You really pricked the balloon. How did I fix that? You know how. I don't know how. She would wait for him to answer, but he would say nothing then, would just sit with his head in his hands. She would feel first guilty, resigned to misery, then furious, trapped, white with anger. Listen to me, she would say then, almost shouting, trying to take him by the shoulders and shake him out of what she could not see as other than an elaborate pose. He would knock her away, and the look on his face, contorted, teeth bared, would render her paralyzed. Why don't you just get it over with? He would say then, leaning close, his face still contorted. Why don't you just go in that bathroom and take every pill in it? Why don't you die? After that, he would leave for a while, breaking things as he went, slamming doors to kick them open, picking up decanters to hurl at mirrors, detouring by way of chairs to smash them against the floor. Always, when he came back, he would sleep in their room, shutting the door against her. Rigid with self-pity, she would lie in another room, wishing for the will to leave. Each believed the other a murderer of time, a destroyer of life itself. She did not know what she was doing in Baker. However it began, it ended like that. Listen, she would say. Don't touch me, he would say. Mariah looked at the payphone for a long while. and then she got out of the car and drank a warm Coke. With the last of the Coke, she swallowed two fiorinal tablets, then closed her eyes against the sun and waited for the fiorinal to clear her head of Carter and what Carter would say. On the way back into the city, the traffic was heavy, and the hot wind blew sand through the windows, and the radio got on her nerves, and after that, Maria did not go back to the freeway, except as a way of getting somewhere.